On World Report, record numbers of women are out-earning their husbands, which means changing roles in marriage and divorce.
When I got the initial judgment, I was devastated. Devastated. I mean, I had a meltdown.
Ex-wives in the age of manimony. Also tonight, a place where women take a backseat to men with few rights and little education. Now new schools may rewrite the future for girls in rural Egypt.
Everyone should be educated because life without education is nothing. It's just a life without meaning.
It's the first of our series, Education on the Edge. And finally, once they were LA gangbangers selling drugs and defending turf.
Within 1 year, you've made $365,000 tax-free.
Now, they're doing an honest day's work, building new lives, but they're keeping their old blood brothers.
Wouldn't it be easier, though, just to not associate with them at all?
That's like you saying, fuck your mom and daddy. You don't even know who you don't care. You don't even care who you is. Your new identity is with some monkeys. Bullshit.
Leaving the gang crime, but keeping the gang. Can it be done? All this tonight on World Report. Now here's correspondent Leslie Bogosian reporting from Boston.
Holly C. & Company may help you. I don't feel divorced. I will never feel completely free. I will never feel completely independent.
When Holly Cincola got married, she dreamed of an equal partnership with her husband. But as her career as a real estate agent in Massachusetts grew, Cincola says all the responsibilities became more hers than his. When she and her husband divorced after 20 years of marriage, she hoped to move on, start over. That hope quickly vanished.
To write those checks, it's very painful. It's very painful. You become overwhelmed with anxiety, stress. It's difficult. I think positive. I try to move forward, but you can't do it all the time with this much pressure. I mean, there's just times when I just think, I'm not going to make it. I can't get my head off the pillow.
Even though Cincola supports their 2 children, including their son with cerebral palsy, she is paying alimony to her ex-husband, to the tune of just under $100,000 a year. Cincola never thought alimony was a consideration. Neither did her lawyer.
He told me I would not have to pay alimony. It was highly unlikely and that most men don't ask for alimony. He couldn't imagine a proud man asking for alimony.
Under Massachusetts state law, she has to pay her ex-husband alimony for the rest of his life. And to make matters worse, after the divorce, he quit his job where he earned $90,000 a year to become a yoga teacher. Holly was forced to make up the difference in pay.
When I got the initial judgment, I was devastated. Devastated. I mean, I had a meltdown. I was just on the kitchen floor like a puddle. It's a complete emotional breakdown. I had that same fallacy that it was a no-fault divorce and that alimony had pretty much dissipated. I thought you only received alimony if you had stayed home and taken care of your children, if you had given something up.
Cincola is part of a growing trend, women paying alimony to their ex-husbands. More and more women now make more money than their husbands, and they're finding out the hard way that divorce law is gender blind. And fortunes, of course, can change during a marriage. Diane Garnick was doing odd jobs when she married Joe Garnick, a plumbing salesman, at age 20. She never expected that during her marriage she'd become a Wall Street powerhouse and the family's main breadwinner.
People talk to me a lot about investing, right? And the way I think about my life, the moment I got married, I was a penny stock, right? I was this little company no one had ever heard of. No one knew what the potential was. And lo and behold, it ends up, I became a pretty important stock in the universe of women that were out there.
Garnick eventually began out-earning her husband, by a lot. It was then they decided to flip-flop roles.
So for a while, we had this debate where I was trying to get him not to work. Then the day finally came where he stopped working, and I was doing the full-time work. And it lasted that way for years.
When they divorced, Garnick was given the choice to pay her ex-husband alimony for life, or to give him the bulk of their multi-million-dollar portfolio and pay $50,000 a year for 4 years. She took the second option, hoping to move on with her life.
I think the alimony laws were the furthest thing from my mind when I was getting divorced. People say things to me like, what did you do that, how you must not have had a good attorney. They can't fathom how somebody would allow this to happen to them. Now, if I was a man, they would say, oh yeah, all right, we all have to do that. Kind of the all boys network. This is the new all girls network that nobody wants to be a part of.
And that all girls network keeps growing. According to a Pew Research study, in 1970, only 4% of women made more than their husbands. Now, 22% earn more. And as some couples divorce, many of those women are now forced to pay alimony.
We are entering a brand new era, and the name of this generation for professional women around the world should be entitled Payable to My Ex-Husband, because so many women don't recognize their earnings potential. So I don't think the antenna is as highly raised for women as it should be.
Women are paying support, like men have been doing for ages. The difference is, culturally, it's very difficult for women to sort of accept the notion that they have to pay.
Robert Cohen is a highly sought-after divorce attorney in New York City with a roster of famous clients, many of whom are women who make more than their husbands.
Do you find that women these days, especially successful women, are naive when it comes to this?
I find them to be very naive. I think that it is, in the first instance, difficult for women to accept the notion that they have to write a check every week or every month. And there is an educational process that there isn't with a man.
I actually had the misconception that I would obtain probably a higher portion of the assets because I contributed significantly to the assets, and that we'd each actually be in a very good position to get on with our lives. I never in my wildest dreams thought I would pay alimony.
In Chincola's case, her divorce was finalized shortly before the real estate market tanked, but she still has to pay the same amount of alimony even though she's now making a lot less. Chincola's ex-husband declined our request for an interview.
So in some instances, you're actually paying him, your ex-husband, more than you're making.
To make these payments, I have tripled the mortgage on my house. I've liquidated all my assets in the house. I've had to liquidate my retirement fund and stocks. I pretty much paid my husband more than I made. So I'm borrowing money to pay alimony. If you don't pay, and this did happen to me, I was in court in front of Judge Casey, and I didn't have any money. I just didn't have it. I had a horrible year. I was up in front of him. He's yelling at me for not paying my alimony and disrespecting him. You hear that a lot in the courtroom. And he said, I want you to sell your house. And I said, absolutely not. I live with my daughter who has some problems right now and needs attention, and I live with my son who is handicapped. I will not sell my home to pay alimony. And that was it. He hit the roof. Get the handcuffs, 30 days in jail. And the bailiff walked over, because they all know me in the courthouse, and went to hold me by the arm and walked me out, and the judge said, no, handcuff her.
So they actually handcuffed you?
He handcuffed me behind my back, and at this point I'm crying. And then he told them to ankle shackle me. And even the bailiff looked at the judge and said, is that necessary? And he said, yes, it is. Ankle shackle her. The man I was dating at the time had to give my ex-husband $30,000 to get me out of jail.
Of course, if gender roles were reversed, this would probably be a non-story. When couples divorce, the assumption is the man is going to pay. But now, many women are paying too. And more men aren't afraid to collect what some are calling manimony.
It's justice, okay? I believe that, hey, you want to end the marriage and we work out a deal, you got to abide by the deal, what we had agreed upon. And I need that money for investments. I got to start a whole new life now at 52 years old.
Dan Walsh and his wife divorced in 2008 after 25 years of marriage. During that time, Walsh's income fluctuated while his wife maintained a steady job. After the divorce, Walsh gave up the family home but was awarded manimony from his ex-wife.
It got to a point where, because of the type of work I was doing, and that was investing in real estate, and I sold everything because my wife had a consistent job, consistent paycheck. I felt it was time to reverse the role of my wife paying the majority of the bills, and I also wanted to go back to school.
But 2 years after the divorce, Walsh is still battling his ex-wife. So far, she's refused to pay.
Whether you're getting the house, you're getting the car, or you're getting alimony, I believe it should be fulfilled, whether it's the man or whether it's the woman. Why my former wife hasn't suffered any consequences is because the laws are not enforced well enough. That being that she's a woman, I think, has a lot to do with it. If the roles were reversed and I had to pay alimony, I truly believe that I'd be incarcerated by now.
Alimony is determined by state law and can differ wildly when it comes to allocation and enforcement. The roots of U.S. alimony laws come from a time where women were considered property of their husbands and depended on them for sustenance. Society was not structured where a woman could entirely provide for herself and children alone. Now, in the 21st century, some of those laws are still on the books, and some are asking, are they still relevant?
I think one of the things that's really important is we have to think about the whole situation of alimony, the whole scenario of alimony happened during a time where one of the parties was not expected to work. And as a result, they had this tremendous downgrade in their living standard when a divorce happened. So alimony kind of went part and parcel with the onset of divorce. If we have a capable person who could very easily go out and work, does it make any sense for them to be on, well, what I'll refer to as relationship welfare, right? Because that's not necessarily what we as society want to promote in everybody here.
Divorce is a very emotional issue. And when you start adding financial obligation to the emotional issue, it becomes very devastating.
Steve Hintner is the president of Massachusetts Alimony Reform, a nonprofit group that is trying to change the laws for everybody. Massachusetts has one of the toughest divorce and alimony laws in the country.
Initially, the laws in Massachusetts were written in 1780. And these laws haven't significantly changed in Massachusetts since then. In around 1970s, they changed the law to add the fact that it's now no-fault divorce. So basically, you've got people getting divorced, but playing by the rules that say that a woman doesn't have the ability to work.
As an ex who's paying alimony, Hintner assumed he was taking up the fight for divorced men everywhere. But in his crusade, he was surprised to see growing support from the opposite sex.
What we hear from people constantly, or we used to hear from people, is that, gee, Joe got a bad deal. His wife really raked him over the coals. Well, now we're finding out that it's also Joanne that's getting a bad deal, whose husband's raking him over the coals. And women are being tied down to pay alimony for life. We have close to 1,000 people in our group, and at least a third of them are women.
This is a problem with the alimony laws. We're in a totally different society now. So a lot of women still do get married and have that dream, and it may work for them. But if it doesn't, and they are making more money than their husbands, they're going to go through a very painful experience.
One of the interesting things I found through this whole episode of trying to change the divorce laws is that we do not hear from the people who are collecting alimony. It's very difficult for them to make a comment. They just won't make comments. They don't come to any hearings and testify.
On the flip side of women paying alimony is the cultural change of men accepting alimony from a woman.
Guys sometimes are reluctant to ask for support, even though they may be entitled to it, because they feel like they're doing something they shouldn't do. They feel like they're in a strange position. Are people going to think badly of them because they're an alimony recipient? But many of them get over it when they know what their rights are, and if their rights are, they're entitled to be supported.
Have people said anything to you, knowing that you are supposed to receive alimony?
Yeah, several times. They'd say, well, you're supposed to get alimony. It's like, how are you getting alimony?
People kind of still frown upon a man that needs to get supported by somebody else. You know, it's kind of like the rites of passage to become, I don't know, a full self-supporting adult don't necessarily pass to the man if he's receiving alimony or living off that alimony. There are a lot more men receiving alimony than there are men publicly talking about getting alimony.
We've contacted many men that are in your situation or similar to yours, and they hesitated to go on camera. Why do you think that is?
Maybe they feel somewhat embarrassed that, you know, geez, I'm asking for some money off of my wife when they, I'm sure, certainly deserve it. And I think it's a social stigma that needs to be changed. And if women want equality, then they need to do their part.
Do you think being a woman and maybe having that idealism of marriage, it made you a little naive on the type of alimony laws?
As a woman and, you know, growing up in the 50s, it feels very unnatural to me. It does. It feels out of the natural sync of things. And I thought this man was going to take care of me for the rest of my life, and we were going to be just a union of this happy, forward-thinking family. And unfortunately, that wasn't it. And I don't think that is the reality for most people. No, I never in a million years would have dreamed this.
Still ahead on World Report. Can you live inside a gang and still within the law? These LA Bloods say they've done it. They're succeeding, but won't leave their blood brothers behind.
When somebody says, just forget about it, you tell that person who's saying, just forget about what womb they came out of, forget about their father, then they'll know how I feel.
Still, LA cops don't like their chances. And up next, our series, Education on the Edge. In a place that values sons more than daughters, how do you get girls out of the house and into the classroom?
Life without education is nothing. It's just a life without meaning.
A new school of thought in rural Egypt when we come back. But first, here's a World Report Index.